This video is brought to you by the 3-Minute Board Game patrons. Keep us independent by supporting us on Patreon. Kia ora koutou and welcome to this very special feature from 3-Minute Board Games, our annual Top 100 video. Now, just to cover up what the Top 100 Games of All Time video is actually about, it is 100% my personal opinion. No Top 100 list is objective. There is no such thing as an objectively good game. It is purely and utterly subjective. After all, the purpose of this list is just entertainment. It's an excuse for me to talk about 100 games I really like. It's certainly not me cudgeling you around to my way of thinking. Or at least it shouldn't be. A few notes about how the video is structured. Have the game's name in the middle, its ranking, and how far it's moved up or down the list from where it was last year. If a game is new to the list, we'll show that as well. Another thing to note is I'll only be on camera for the top 20, and that's these games over here. This is the top 20 right here. And the reason for that is it's much easier if I do 4/5 of the entries just in front of a microphone rather than being in front of the camera for the whole 100 games. It's also one way I can keep the video a bit shorter. After all, there are other channels that break this into 10 separate videos, each being over an hour long. Now, before we jump into the list, a friendly reminder that 3-Minute Board Games does not do paid content. We do not take money from publishers for our opinion. Our revenue stream is entirely YouTube videos and Patreon. So if you want to support independent voices in board game media like ourselves, please come support us on Patreon. That's the reason this is a fun, informative video and not 100 ads strung back to back. Anyway, onto the list. Number 100, Skyrise. Skyrise was one of my favourite new games from last year. It's an interesting combination of an area control game and an auction game, with a fascinating system that has the lot of the auction change every time there's a bid, because you are bidding for a new space each time, which is so wonderfully simple and also incredibly fascinating. It's a beautiful looking game as well, full of tons of interesting decisions. I expect this one to climb up in future years. Number 99, SpaceCorp. SpaceCorp is first and foremost a space race game, and it's one that uses cards to drive all of its effects. The really fascinating thing about SpaceCorp is it takes place over 3 eras. The first era starts you in the inner solar system, then you go to the outer solar system, before finally going interstellar. Each era has slightly different rules, but it's not overwhelming, especially when compared to other space race games. This one has a newly released app on Steam, and I was involved in testing that app, specifically testing to see if the bot players were tough enough, and giving feedback to make them a lot harder. Number 98, The Isle of Cats. The Isle of Cats is an adorable polynomino placement game. Here you are trying to stuff as many cats as you can into a ship, and you're trying to match up different sets and cover as much of the ship as possible. This game has some really cool features, like a simple set of rules for kids, and emergent victory conditions and special rules for adults. It's fallen down my top 100 a bit because there's another polynomino game I like a little bit more. But if you are shopping for a family, then Isle of Cats would definitely be the first pick. Number 97, The Captain is Dead. Here's a co-op game I've been playing consistently on and off for around a decade. The premise is fantastic. You are the crew of a classic sci-fi hero ship when the captain has just been taken out. It's the final few minutes of an episode, and you desperately try to repair the jump drive so you can get the hell out of there. It's still one of my favourite firefighting co-ops where you're playing against the board trying to kill you. I love the variety of characters the game has. The core gameplay is rock solid, and there's a great app adaptation of it as well. The game has a couple of sequels, but neither of them replicate the charm of the original. Number 96, Imperial Spells and Steam. This game is a lot. There's a lot happening in it. You've got an anime theme, this massive box full of very shiny components, and a whole lot of very bright things on the board. Imperial is a train game, but it's a train game with a difference. On the board, you're doing the same sort of stuff you'd expect in a train game. Placing down routes to collect resources to fulfill orders. Very normal stuff. But off the board, you also build up your train. And your train is full of spell cars. So each car in your train has a spell effect that manipulates the game. There's a ton happening in Imperial Spells and Steam. It is very much a classic train game, dialed up to 11 with a chunk of engine building put in. Number 95, Defenders of the Last Stand. Now this is an unusual game. It's a sequel to Defenders of the Realm, but I vastly prefer this version. And it's a weird mix of sort of Arkham Horror and Pandemic rolled into one with a Mad Max theme. So your characters roam around the board, going on missions, having encounters, defeating baddies. But that's all a sideshow. This game is about defeating the bosses. And each of the 4 attack paths has a different boss on it. It's an absolute kitchen sink of a game. Like, this shouldn't be a good game. And I suspect most people who play it won't think it's quite as good as I think it is. But it's just such a big, wonderful, chaotic mess. It's dropped down the list a little bit because a new game in this family has come out, and that game is Freedom 5. And I've also been playing that. And that uses the same core system, but instead of the post-apocalypse, its setting is the same as Sentinels of the Multiverse. I'm curious to see if next year, if Freedom 5 displaces Defenders of the Last Stand from this list. Number 94, Above and Below. After all these years, there's still not another game quite like Above and Below. A game that seamlessly blends two types of games together. A narrative adventure game, and a more traditional Euro game. A big chunk of the game is collecting resources and building up your township above, but then you go below to conduct adventures. And the whole thing works ever so well because of Ryan Locket's art style. He's the designer of the game and he's also the artist. There's a singular vision here, and you can really tell. It's such a warm, inviting world. A world that he's made a lot of other games in after Above and Below. I think I'll always have a soft spot for this game, just because of how different it is and how inviting it is. Number 93, Museum. I was really saddened to find that the publisher of this game has gone out of business, because Museum is a really neat game. Vincent Dutray is one of my favourite artists in board gaming, and this might be his best game. The illustrations throughout are high caliber, it's a beautiful looking game. I also really like its take on set collection, because museums are naturally places that like to put together collections and display them. So having a collection of cards that is displayed in front of you, it just makes sense. The one thing that really elevates Museum for me is how you discard cards into your own discard pile to pay to put cards in your collection. But then other players can take cards from your discard. So there's a little bit of sniping of things out of people's back catalogs, and I love that extra layer in the game. Museum is a game that is not leaving my collection anytime soon because I think it is a literal work of art. And the gameplay is pretty damn good too. Number 92, Harmonies. Harmonies is a beautiful, lightweight game about building an ecosystem. The game is about building a three-dimensional environment using discs, and how you stack these discs represents different things, such as mountains and rivers. You're then drafting animal cards and trying to place them into your environment, and trying to do so in the way that scores you the most amount of points. It's a very simple game. It has really straightforward rules, and it's very easy to teach. But it does something that a lot of lighter games don't do, and that's leave you with a sense of satisfaction at the end of the game. Because it wasn't just a disposable game, you built a little environment. And I think it's the tactile nature of the game that elevates it for me, being able to build your environment. If it was just cards, I wouldn't be so enamored by it. Harmonies is an absolute banger as a family game. Number 91, Modern Art. Rainer Knizia is a lot of people's favourite designers. He's not one of my favourites, but this game of his, Modern Art, is an absolute treat. For me, this is the best pure auction game that has ever been made, and the theming is absolutely perfect. And that's because of how the art world works. In the game, as in real life, things don't necessarily have intrinsic value, they have perceived value. And Modern Art replicates that by having each auction have a flow-on effect to what art is worth later in the game. It's an exceedingly clever game, and also comes with a gavel that you get to bang when you're doing the auctions. I think more games that do auctions should come with a little gavel. Number 90, Space Cadets. You are the crew of a spaceship, but not a very well-trained crew. You're a bunch of space cadets that have been assigned different positions on board the ship. Each of those different positions is a mini-game. One of the quirks here is these mini-games are played under a timer. So while you can talk about your overall plans at the start of the round, there is time pressure when you're doing your own puzzles, like if you're trying to get the shields in the right direction, if you're the pilot trying to move the ship in the right direction, and of course, if you're the weapons officer trying to hit the baddies with the disc. Space Cadets can go hilariously wrong at times. And in that regard, it's really fun as sort of a slapstick co-op game where things are going terribly wrong. But it can also be played on another level. Once you get comfortable with the game and get good at the stations, and you start feeling like you're knowing what you're doing as a crew, it can be super rewarding. Flying this unwieldy ship around, getting your shields in the right place, hitting your targets, scanning the things, and completing your missions. Space Cadets is just a whole bunch of fun, and I think the hands-on aspect of the game really makes a difference. Number 89, Empires of the Void 2. Here's the second Ryan Lockett game on the list. and this one is very different to Above and Below. It's a grand space opera game, but unlike most games in that genre, it's one that can be played in 2 hours. And it does this by having less bloat and focusing in on the things that matter. Instead of a fleet of disposable ships, you have one big ship that you build up. Instead of 36 odd mix and match worlds that are just icons on the board, it has a smaller number of worlds that have character to them, that each have their own interesting feature and quirk. Empires of the Void 2 doesn't feel like a randomly generated galaxy. It feels like you're playing out a pivotal moment in this particular sector's history. And for that, it stands apart from the other games in this genre. It's also absolutely stunning. I love everything about the presentation of this game. Number 88, Grand Austria Hotel. This game was new to me this year, and it's quickly become one of my favorites. Grand Austria Hotel is exactly the kind of Euro game that clicks with me, because it's about action optimization and building an engine. And there's all this information in front of you in this game, different guests and different dice you can draft, plus the hand of staff cards you start with. All of these combine to make fantastic decision points throughout the course of the game. Grand Austria Hotel is a kind of Euro game that makes you feel smart when you do well at it. It's also got this wonderfully charming vibe and aesthetic to it as well. It's one of those wonderful things. It's a game that looks good and plays good as well. Number 87, Galactic Cruise. I have somewhat gone off heavyweight Euros lately, like really big chunky Euro games with tons of moving mechanics. I kinda am a little bit over them, except for Galactic Cruise it seems. Something about this game's theme just really clicked with me, and all of its moving parts, and it has a ton of moving parts, all seem to make a lot of sense. Galactic Cruise hit a really sweet spot of offering me a ton of decisions, but not so many was overwhelming. Of being resource tight, but not a game where I had to scrape by constantly and it felt like I was struggling all the way through. And mechanically it all makes sense. Advertising the rides, to building the rockets, to getting the people on board, to sending them to their different destinations. Everything you do in Galactic Cruise feels like it's something a cruise company would do. And to me, that's a real difference maker. Because narrative hooks are how I remember rules. The more abstracted a game is, the more likely my brain is to sort of slide over it. It's those narrative hooks that let me dig into a more complex game. That's why I find it far easier to play a complex war game usually than I do a complex Euro game. Galactic Cruise is the exception. It's an ultra thematic, heavy Euro game, and I love it for that. Number 86, Kemet, Blood and Sand. There's nothing like a really good area control game, where you can get your elbows out, beat up your friends, and fight viciously, tooth and nail, for the victory. Kemet does that with a really neat Egyptian theme and a whole bunch of cool magic and monsters. Instead of just sending your troops down the board, you can send your troops down the board with a giant scorpion. Another player can master the secrets of death magic, and each player will build up a different set of powers as the game goes through. The game has a natural crescendo where you build up these powers until the final round, and the final round can just come at an unexpected time, and then everything gets thrown to the wall. If you have 4 or 5 players and want a game where you can smash each other in the mouth, Kemet is a winner. Number 85, Rush MD. Here we have a hospital management game with the difference. It's all done in real time with sand timers. Rush MD is madness. It is absolutely frantic from stop to go. You have to manage everything in the hospital, from admitting patients to doing scans to doing surgery on them, giving them the medication and getting it all right, all under time pressure. And also while doing dexterity games as well. Rush MD is just a hoot. And I understand that some people won't like the chaotic energy this game brings, but there's no other game that does it quite as well as Rush MD. Because every time I play it, the looks on people's faces, the intensity of the game is something special. It's one of those games, you can look at it on paper, but you can't judge it until you've actually played it. And every time I play it, I just remember how damn fun it is. Number 84, Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island. Robinson Crusoe is sold as a cooperative game, but I've never played it cooperatively. I only play it as a solo game. And as a solo game, it's exceptional. It's all about surviving on a jungle island. And the game comes with a bunch of different missions that have different ways of doing the survival. What drives the game though is a push your luck system. You do not have enough actions to do everything if you don't take any risks. You have to manage when you take those risks and how and when you push your luck. The game can be quite swingy and it is incredibly unforgiving, but it's one of those games that when you win it, you feel like you've won a game. It probably would be good as a cooperative game, but I imagine it'd be a lot harder. Years after its release, there are a ton of other survival games out there, and none of them have come close to matching Robinson Crusoe's unique combination of chaos and control. Number 83, Lords of Waterdeep. For me, this is almost the archetypical worker placement game. You place down your workers to get cubes. You get those cubes, you spend them to complete missions. And there's some action cards thrown in to shake the game up. Bundle that all up with a D&D theme, and you have something very simple, but something that still works really well. There are more involved, more complex, and more detailed games out there. But Lords of Waterdeep does the basics well, and it wraps up all those basics in a very friendly package. It's a game I still recommend to a lot of people to this day. If people are talking about getting into board gaming, Lords of Waterdeep is one of the first games I'll bring up in conversation, especially if they're from a role-playing game background. I'm really glad to hear that it's also coming back. There was a chance that this one was going to go out of print, but it looks like it is returning, and that is great news. Number 82, Black Orchestra. This is a very unusual game. It's a cooperative game where you're playing members of a conspiracy inside Nazi Germany plotting to kill Hitler. Now, the theme alone sets it apart, but mechanically it's also very different too. It's not a firefighting co-op. It's a game about building up to a decisive point. You're trying to get all the trappings in place in order to assassinate Hitler. But in order to do that, you need to have the right conspiracy, you need to have the right people, and you need the right motivation. This game acknowledges that people just don't suddenly become assassins. Your characters have to build up to it. And the game can come down to a single dice roll. And in most games, I'd say that would be kind of poor, but in Black Orchestra it works. Because that final dice roll is the game. It's been all about maneuvering into that position, to take your shot, to see if you can knock Hitler off. And if you hit, the game's over and you win. But if you miss, the game's not necessarily over. Things are going to get a lot harder for everyone else in the conspiracy from that point on, but you might be able to have a second go later. A truly unique and interesting game. Number 81, Dune. I've been somewhat surprised to see that there isn't a movie version of this game out. Despite another game that's going to appear on this list shortly, I consider this version of Dune to be the definitive Dune game. It is a wonderful negotiation game, and it's a game about taking risks and picking your moment and going for it. It is a game with terrible consequences for mistakes and bad actions, and there are massive reversals that can happen. You can lose everything in a single turn. You stack all your eggs in one basket, someone is going to smash that basket, but you can come back. And I've seen players who are wiped out in turn 2 come back in turn 6 or 7 with a little bit of a presence and get back into the game. It's about shifting alliances, it's about balance of power, and it feels like the grand political drama that Dune is. Dune is a very old school game. The original came out in 1979, and this version does tighten the game up a little, but it doesn't destroy its essence. It's a game where you need a tough skin to play it, but winning in this game feels earned. Number 80, Art Society. Here's a game that takes two very simple systems, an auction system and a tile placement system, and marries them together into a fantastic combination. Each round there'll be a set of artworks available to draft. You then run an auction to determine who gets to pick first. And once you've picked your artwork, you try to hang it on the wall. And this is what makes the game really tick for me. It's the tactile nature of putting it on the board and physically arranging your art display to maximize your points. And there's some interesting rules about how certain things can and can't touch in order for you to score points. But at the end of the game, you build up this art wall, and it's very pleasing. And the art nerd in me loves that most of the artwork in your art museum are parodies of really famous bits of work. This is a super family-friendly game, and one that suits casual gamers as well. But there's definitely enough there to keep a serious gamer like myself engaged as well. Number 79, Lanterns, the Harvest Festival. What a wonderfully simple and beautiful game this is. The premise about placing lanterns down at a lantern festival just works. And as the game expands, it creates this beautiful visual on the board. Lanterns works best at 4 players, with each player sitting at one edge of the table. Because when you place a tile in lanterns, how you place it determines what players get what cards. You get the colour facing yourself, and everyone gets the colour facing them. Plus you get any colours that match. This is all to build up a hand of colour cards that you then spend to buy reward cards. It's a beautiful, elegant game that doesn't take very long to play, has lots of fun decisions in it, and also has a little bit of passive aggressiveness as well, because the colour cards are a finite resource, and you can deliberately target someone to get a card that isn't available currently. One of my favourite games to play when we've just got 15 minutes to kill. Number 78, Memoir 44. Now, while I'm talking about Memoir 44 here, I am really talking about the whole command and colours system. There are a ton of games made using the same system as Memoir 44. And some are better than others, but by and large this entry represents them as a collective. Of course, of those games, Memoir 44 is my favourite and the one I own all the stuff for. It is a fantastic light war game, probably the best introductory war game that's ever been made. It has very simple combat rules and a ton of scenarios you can play, but what makes it such a great game is its order system. The board's split up into 3 sections, and the cards you have in hand will activate units in those different sections. But it does mean you'll go through periods of playing the game where you might not have the cards to respond to your opponent's actions. And to me, that's what makes it a great war game. Because in a war game, if you always have perfect information, and you can always react to every attack, it doesn't quite simulate how war really works. In war, there are communication breakdowns, there are uncertainty, there isn't perfect information. Memoir 44's core card system replicates that so well, and it's so easy. It's a wonderful series of games, and there's bound to be some game in the franchise that'll interest just about everyone that could possibly be interested in war games. Number 77, Scholars of the South Tigris. The other 2 titles in the South Tigris series didn't quite do it for me, but Scholars I consider something a little special. There is a lot happening in Scholars. The core idea is that you're in Baghdad at the House of Wisdom and you're trying to translate a ton of documents. So first you have to go out and find the documents. Then you have to bring them back in. Then you have to find the right translators to take them from their original language into Arabic, and this can take multiple steps. It's a very busy game, but unlike a lot of heavy Euros, everything you do makes a modicum of sense. The process of translation is very intuitive, and it makes this rather rules-heavy game very easy to digest. I am an absolute sucker for tech trees in games, and I love the one in Scholars as well. Scholars is probably the most complex dice placement game I've ever played, and you know what? I love it for that. I love that it uses 7 types of dice, and somehow that still isn't overwhelming to me. Number 76, Arx. Arx is considered to be by many a 4X game, and not only that, a 4X space game, and that puts it in the same niche as Twilight Imperium, Eclipse, and Star Trek Ascendancy. I think it's a very different game to that. I don't really view it as a 4X game at all, even though it uses 4X trappings, and that's because I think the real game of Arx is not Arx itself. It's the campaign game that you can buy as an expansion. I think core Arx is fine, it's very interesting, but the game really is the Blighted Reach expansion. And then it's not just a 4X game. It is a story game. It's a sort of legacy game. It's a massive space opera game. It's a game where dramatic, exciting things will happen all the time. There are wicked reversals, changing fortune and glory, and even your faction's narrative and your goals will change throughout the course of the campaign. And it won't necessarily feel like a traditional 4X, except right at the start of the game. A Blighted Reach campaign we played ended with 1 ship left alive in the galaxy. I'm not going to tell you why that's the case, but it was a very different experience to a traditional 4X game. And that's why I've put Arx on this list, because it's a fascinating, unique, and unusual game. It's not just 4X by the numbers. Number 75, Dune Imperium Uprising. Now you could honestly put Dune Imperium here as well. As far as I'm concerned, they're 2 different takes on the same game, and they both belong at this point. Which one you prefer will be up to you, and it really comes down to how much emphasis you want on the combat in the game. If you want lots of combat, go for Uprising. If you want less combat, choose the original Dune Imperium. Either way, they are both fantastic games. I was initially pretty cool on Dune Imperium, but it has grown on me a lot over the years. And that's because a combination of deck building plus worker placement just works really well in Dune Imperium. On top of that, you do have the conflict as well, which gives some intense player versus player interaction that you don't normally get in a worker placement game. So it's this nice combo of passive-aggressive Euro worker placement mechanics with more traditional I throw my troops at you and try to kill you mechanics from a thematic style game. And that sounds like it shouldn't work that well, but it works very well. And while I'm not sure it nails its thematic elements quite as well as the original Dune, it's a much tighter game. One warning though, don't drown it in expansions. Sometimes less is more. Number 74, Le Havre. Uwe Rosenberg is one of the world's most respected board game designers, with a ton of games that lots of gamers really enjoy. My favorite game of his is Le Havre. Le Havre is an action optimization game. It's all about setting up your little shipping company, picking up resources as your boat goes down the harbor, and then turning those resources into the biggest, scariest, money-producing engine you can make. There's a lot I love in Le Havre, but what really drives this game is that each turn you have one of 2 things to do. Either take the resources in front of you, or take an action on a building. And to me, that's great design. Le Havre doesn't bombard you with choices, but from start to finish, it gives you an endless stream of meaningful decisions. Number 73, Planet Unknown. This is a science fiction themed polynomino game about terraforming planets. Each tile you pick is a different piece of terrain, and how you arrange them on your planet is how you'll score points. You'll also advance up technology tracks, collect special powers and unlocks, and generally have a rollicking good time drafting tiles and putting them on your planet. One of the neat things about this game is the lazy Susan in the middle of the table. The active player gets to decide what tile they want, and every other player gets to pick from the tiles in front of them. It's a lovely focal point for the game. There's also different planets with different rules and different corporations if you want to play an asymmetric version of the game. I love everything Planet Unknown does. Starting off with a simple rule set where you're all using the same planet and the same corporation, but also capable of being a much more complex and involved game. Plus, it's just gosh darn pretty. Number 72, Akropolis. There are a ton of lightweight drafting and tile selection games out there. So what makes Akropolis one of the greatest games of all time for me? Well, that's simple. It's three-dimensional. When you draft your tiles and start building your city in Akropolis, you're trying to match the different colored districts in their unique scoring patterns. But once you have enough tiles down, you can start building up. You can place new tiles on top of existing ones, and the higher you place, the more those top tiles score. It just adds that extra level of thinking, and it vastly increases the optimal placing position for every tile. Because not only can you go out, you can now go up. Akropolis plays out in about 15 minutes, and every time it's quality. Really family friendly as well, as it has very simple rules, and no direct antagonism. Number 71, Biblios. This is a very simple drafting game that goes through two phases. The first phase of the game is the donation phase. When it's your turn, you'll pick a number of cards equal to the number of players plus one, and you'll do this one at a time. And you're allowed to keep one of these cards, discard one of the cards, and put the others face up for the other players to take. Once you've gone through the deck of cards, you'll take the discards and go through them one at a time and bid on them. There are 5 suits of cards, and only the player who has the most cards in that suit scores those points. And there are other cards that can adjust up and down what other suits of cards are worth. So you're trying to win some suits and maximize their points value. This all plays out in about 20 minutes. It is a game that packs in so many decisions into such a small time. And the end of every game, counting up the scoring, is always dramatic. It's got somewhat of a meaningless theme, but who cares? This game has fantastic core gameplay. It is a great pity that it is out of print. Number 70, Mosaic, A Story of Civilization. Mosaic is a fresh take on the civilization game genre. It allows you to do all of the classic civilization stuff in a much smaller time frame than normal. And the way it does that is each round you get to do one of 8 actions. So instead of running through an entire laundry list of actions your civilization can do, you get to pick one priority each turn. So the game moves at a quick pace. One of my favorite things about Mosaic is how many different strategies I've seen win in this game. People going hard into military, people going hard into science, other people just building up massive populations. It's also a civilization game where people don't get wiped off the board. If someone's doing well militarily, that just means they're occupying a territory. The other players in that territory can still do other things. So Mosaic is a great game for me because it's a fast-paced civilization game that has tons of viable strategies, isn't bogged down with feel-bad moments, and doesn't take all day to play. Number 69, Oathsworn, Into the Deepwood. Oathsworn is a fantasy campaign that lasts around 20 sessions, and each session is broken up into 2 major parts. You'll start off by doing an investigation, where you're given a case to solve and you have to track down leads. And this will take you to a bunch of different locations, where you'll discover evidence and try to figure out what you're up against. The second half of each session is usually a fight against a ginormous monster, the thing you've been investigating. Oathsworn does an amazing job of balancing these 2 aspects. The story is deep and rich and very well written, especially for board gaming. While the battles themselves are exciting, varied, and tense, the characters you play all feel quite different, and the battles really do reward tactical thinking. The setting is quite grim and dark, but it's not over the top. There's no ham-fisted edginess to be seen here. Oathsworn really is a mature fantasy role-playing game style board game, and an excellent one at that. Number 68, Everdell. Everdell is a very clever game. It has very family-friendly and warm presentation, being about woodland critters building their little houses. And some more serious gamer types might dismiss it just because of how it looks. But the gameplay in Everdell is rock solid. It does a little bit of worker placement, a little bit of set collection, and a lot of engine building. But the thing that makes Everdell a great game for me is the fact that your town has limited spaces, and you can easily fill up your town during the game. But filling it up too quickly with low-cost cards can actually wreck the game for you. And that balancing act of not just putting a card into your village because you can, is what makes the decisions in Everdell matter just that little bit more. I'm also in this game, and that makes me terribly biased towards it. Number 67, Twilight Struggle. This used to be my all-time favorite game. I loved this one for a good number of years, and I still think of it fondly. I just feel a little bit burned out on it. The theme is one I find very interesting. It's all about the Cold War, where one side plays the Soviets and the other side plays the Americans. And each of the superpowers is trying to influence every other country in the world. The reason it's a brilliant game is its core card system. There is a central card deck that both players pull from, and cards can be neutral or have your symbol or your opponent's symbol on them. If you play one of your own cards, you get to take the actions or use it as an event. But if you play one of your opponent's cards, the event goes off anyway and you get to take the action. So if you end up with a handful of cards that benefit your opponent, you have to manage those really carefully. And it's that hand management and managing risk within Twilight Struggle that makes it a brilliant game. One thing that has dragged the game down for me is the DEFCON system. I don't like winning or losing by DEFCON. It always feels anticlimactic to me. Number 66, Dawn of the Zeds, 3rd edition. If you've ever wanted a solo game that is a real challenge, and I mean a real challenge, a game that kicks you in the teeth over and over again, then Dawn of the Zeds is for you. The premise of the game is you are defending a small town from a zombie apocalypse. You have limited resources and 4 different approaches to the town to defend. The game has 5 difficulty levels, and it's quite winnable on some of them. But on the 2 highest difficulties, it is so hard. But it is one of those games that when you do win it, when you do beat the game on those high difficulties, you feel like you earned it. It has a great combination of tactical gameplay and emergent story elements. The game has an amazing knack of creating memorable moments. So Dawn of the Zeds is a great game because it creates memorable moments and it's hard as balls to win. Number 65, Kolejka. Kolejka is a game set in Cold War Poland, right towards the end of the Soviet regime where everything was starting to fall over. It is a game about queuing, and it's a game about shortages, and it's a game about ridiculous bureaucracy. It's a game where you will rat out your neighbors to the authorities so you can get to the front of the line so you can get some toilet paper. It's farcical and ridiculous, and every single card in the game is just downright mean, but it's also hilarious. It might be the greatest satirical game ever made, because it perfectly lampoons that point of history. Kolejka is a great example of why you don't keep politics out of board games. It's an intensely political board game, and all the better for it. Number 64, Spartacus, a game of blood and treachery. There are 2 versions of Spartacus out there. The original one that's based on the Stars TV show, and a generic one that doesn't use that show's IP. Both have the same rule sets. But this is a game where I think the TV show clip art works a lot better than the artwork in the other version of the game. Spartacus is a game in 3 parts. Each of you are controlling a different gladiatorial ludus. That is, you are members of the Roman middle class who own gladiators and slaves. You'll start off by playing an intrigue round, where you'll try to put into play schemes that will enrich yourself and hurt your opponents. A great feature in this game is that players can combine their influence to do bigger schemes. And this can lead to a lot of interaction and a lot of money going back and forth between players. The second phase of the game is auctioning new gladiators, slaves, and training. And this is all to build up your economy engine and to get you good gladiators, because the third part of the game is fighting in the arena. Now in the previous phase, someone would have bid to host the games, and they get to invite people along to the games. You can refuse, but winning in the arena is the way you build your influence. And that's ultimately how you're going to win. And even in the arena, there can be backstabs and betrayals and intrigue going on. People can challenge someone who only has weak fighters and put Spartacus in the ring against them. It is a wonderful game for people who like treachery, betrayals, and backstabbing. It's also a great game for table talk, and for really getting into the arena fights because you're betting on them. Obviously, the subject matter is not for everyone, and it's a great game just because of the atmosphere it brings to the table. Number 63, Suburbia. Suburbia is a tile drafting game about building up a borough in a city. What makes Suburbia great is that every tile you pick and everywhere you put it really matters. Tiles will have bonuses and negatives based on where they're placed, and these will evolve through the course of the game. And you'll want to chain placements to get mutually beneficial effects. You need to manage the appeal of your city, as well as the income it makes. And you can't just flood your borough with one type of district. You have to balance things. And it's how you balance these different district types, and how you position them, that makes Suburbia a really great city building game. It's not overwhelmingly complex either. There's just a lot of little math decisions here and there. And for me, that's a major plus. Number 62, Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. When people think of Arkham Horror, it's the 2nd Edition they most frequently think of. And there are very few games I would have played more than Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. It is a firefighting cooperative game where you play a group of investigators trying to save Arkham from gates that are opening to other worlds. Behind this will be a Great Old One, and each of the Great Old Ones plays out slightly differently. Arkham Horror has a knack of creating memorable events. There are so many stories to tell within the game and so many different things that can happen. Arkham Horror has somewhat of a reputation for being a bit random, and I quite disagree with that. I think there are plenty of tools within this game to reduce randomness and risk. You can adjust player sliders, there's a clue system, and then there's having knowledge of the different encounter decks. There is a lot to take in, but you can't mistake a game having a lot of things happening for a game being just random. I love Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. I set it up every year and still play it, and it is always a good time. A few years back, I did interviews with the designer of Arkham Horror 1st Edition, 2nd Edition, and 3rd Edition, and did a big deep dive into Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. That video, Arkham Horror The Rear View, is available on our channel. Number 61, Gaia Project. Gaia Project is the second game in the Terra Mystica series, which also includes Terra Nova and Age of Innovation. Each of you plays a different alien race with distinct powers, and perhaps more importantly, a unique type of homeworld. You are trying to terraform planets to suit your needs in order to build an interstellar society. Gaia Project is a very tight game. You never really have enough resources at any point in the game to do everything you want. And if you make some poor moves, you can get really stuck. I love a good tech tree, and Gaia Project has one of my favorite tech trees in any game. Each step on these trees unlocks different possibilities for you and different ways of playing. For me, Gaia Project uses all of the best elements of the Terra Mystica series, but with a far more interesting theme. It's a very deep and rewarding game that I recommend to anyone who wants a gaming challenge. Number 60, Slay the Spire. This is a great adaptation of an incredibly popular computer game. I've played Slay the Spire on the computer an awful lot, and I was really pleased to see the board game come into existence. What makes it a great game for me is it takes all of the great parts from Slay the Spire, simplifies them, and makes it into a cooperative game. It is not the same as just playing the computer game, because the computer game is entirely a solo experience. The board game lets you develop your deck slowly through the course of the game, and each of your characters can specialize, grow, and do their own thing. I feel this game is at its best with 2 to 3 players. If you are looking for a cooperative game that feels like an epic campaign each time you play it, definitely check out Slay the Spire. Number 59, this is a fantastic card-driven war game about the First World War. And by being a card-driven war game, it means you can't do everything every turn. Without bogging you down with the rules, the game makes it so you can't just stay quiet on the Western Front. Attacking is such a precarious and dangerous thing to do, but you have to do it as the Allies. And you have to do it as the Central Powers. You cannot win this game on the defensive, even though the offense is incredibly tough. And that means you are making awful decisions all the time throughout the game. And I find that fascinating. Paths of Glory is a great game because of how its card-driven system works, how it allows you to fight out the entire First World War in an afternoon, and how both players just feel like they are against the wall the whole damned game. Number 58, Roll for the Galaxy. Roll for the Galaxy is a game where your different dice represent different parts of your civilization. And as you develop technologies and colonize worlds, you'll add extra dice to your dice pool. Manipulating that dice and coming up with a way to cycle them back and forth is the key to winning the game. The reason I love Roll for the Galaxy is you start off with a small empire, but your empire has some characteristics. You then take the dice and powers that you start with, and you draft things, and you build things, and you expand that out to an ever-increasing dice pool. The game is always a tight race to the finish line, and you try to maximize the use of every single die you have. It's also a very colorful, fun, and family-friendly game as well. And if you just love rolling lots and lots of dice, you're gonna love this game. Number 57, Daybreak. This is another game from Matt Leacock, the designer of Pandemic, and arguably the king of firefighting cooperative games. In Daybreak, however, the fire you are fighting against is climate change, and the weapons at your hand are green policies. Daybreak is an incredibly well-researched game, and every single policy card in the game has a link to a site where you can learn more about that specific environmental policy. As an educational piece, it's exceptional. As a game, it's an absolute banger as well. Each player can only have 5 policies in play at any time, but those can be buffed with other cards. And your policy platform can shift. It's a game that rewards planning, it's a game that rewards cooperation, and it's a game that would really appeal to people who like engine building games that have lots of combos that trigger off each other. Daybreak is an exceptionally clever cooperative game. Number 56, Castle Combo. This game has quickly become one of my favourite games to end a session with. Each game lasts only 9 turns, and every turn you will draft a card and add it to your tableau. And you're creating a 3x3 grid. Every single card scores differently, and they score based on how they are positioned in your 3x3 grid. In those 9 turns, you have so many little decisions to make about what tags to get, where to place your character, how much money you spend on something, and what sort of way you're going to score your points, because there's so many different little combos. Castle Combo is a delightful short game. Also packs away into a nice small box. Number 55, The Crew Mission Deep Sea. This is the second game in the Crew series, but the first game in the Crew series is perfectly good as well. I just think Mission Deep Sea does everything just that little bit better. What they are is a cooperative trick-taking game. So a lot of the things you'd expect from a game like Hearts or Bridge, you do that, but you're doing it cooperatively. Each game players will be assigned a set mission. Certain cards they have to win the tricks involving. And if every player wins those tricks, you complete the mission. The Crew comes with a lot of levers that allow you to change the difficulty of the game as well. So you can either play through the campaign, doing them one at a time, or just find the level that you're comfortable playing at. The Crew is an amazing game to play for 15 minutes at the end of a game session, but there's enough here that you can make it the meat and bones of a session as well, by playing a dozen or more rounds of it back to back, something I have done on multiple occasions. What truly blows me away about The Crew though, is that it took this long for someone to make a really good cooperative trick-taking game. What a genius idea. Number 54, Crisis. Most economic games start you off small and build throughout the course of the game. Crisis is a little bit different. It's a game set during a financial collapse. True, your business does start off small and you will expand it through the course of the game, but you're trying to take advantage of the chaos in society as well. The game has a semi-cooperative element, because you need to reach a certain threshold each turn to keep the economy from collapsing. And that's entirely optional as well, because if the economy collapses, the game ends, but it scores differently than if you'd finished the game with the economy still going. Sometimes you as a player might be better off to watch the whole thing burn and take your money and run. Crisis is a brutal, unforgiving worker placement game, and it's a great game because it's such a different experience. Also looks wonderful, and I dig the near future theming as well. Number 53, Power Grid. When I think of classic Euro games, I think of things like Power Grid. It's a bit of an auction game, it's a bit of a market manipulation game, and it's all about building networks. It's a game that I might not play for a couple of years, but every time I come back to it, I go, damn, this is a clever, well-designed game. It's a great game because it's not necessarily a fancy game, but it does everything so well. And I really like the changeover point in the middle of the game. You start off where only one person can be in each area, and midway through the game, that changes so people can have overlapping networks. And I think that's a very big part of why playing Power Grid feels so exciting and rewarding every time you play. You have the first part of the game where you're finding your own space to grow, and then the second half of the game is all about expansion. If you like Euro games and you haven't played Power Grid, definitely give it a go. Number 52, Android Netrunner. For me, this is without a doubt the best dueling collectible card game or trading card game ever made, and it achieves that despite having asymmetric sides. On one side of the game, you have a corporation who's trying to score their agendas in secret, and on the other side you have the runner who's trying to find those agendas, whether they're face down on the table, in a discard pile, in the player's deck, or in their hand. I think Netrunner is the greatest dueling game because it has an element of psychology in it that games like Magic the Gathering just do not have. There's bluffing and risk-taking that you just don't see in other card games. The corporation is constantly playing some kind of shell game, and the runner can almost always run on a spot. It's just a matter of how many times they can do it. So it's about managing risk and managing resources. I think from a player point of view, Netrunner operates at a higher level than any other head-to-head card game, and that's what makes it one of the greatest games ever for me. Number 51, Stationfall. This is a new entry in this list, and it's an absolute mad lad of a game. Stationfall is set on a space station that's just about to fall out of the sky and explode. The station is populated by a whole bunch of wacky, eccentric characters, and you're controlling at least one of them. The thing is, there are a lot more characters on the station than there are players, and no one knows who everyone else is playing. It's a hidden role game, and each character has wildly varying ways of scoring points. Stationfall is a very complex game, but most of the rules make sense thematically. And when it clicks with players, it is unlike anything else on the market. I've seen it described as a party game for serious gamers, and that's exactly what it is. And I find that once you're familiar with the game, the extra crunchy rules actually add to the experience. It's also just a darkly comedic, hilarious experience. Number 50, Star Trek Ascendancy. Star Trek Ascendancy is a 4X Space Empires type game set in the Star Trek universe. It has all the stuff you normally expect from one of these games. Exploration, starship battles, technology, planetary conquest, all of that good stuff. What makes it a great game for me is its theming. Every one of the factions feels like their Star Trek counterpart. And unlike most of the other games in the 4X genre, I actually care about these factions. They're not just some random weird thing. The Ferengi are all about making money, the Cardassians are all about exploiting people, the Federation just want to conquer everyone with peace and love and kind words and certainly not bombs. And if you're not sure how to play the game, just take the Klingons and go and fight everyone. It's the most characterful 4X game I've ever played, and that's what makes it a great game to me. I care about the factions involved, I care about the story that's being told, and I love moving my ships around and blowing things up. I really enjoy Star Trek Ascendancy. I think it is a great thematic game. Number 49, Horrified. This is another firefighting co-op, and I clearly think the firefighting co-ops are a great genre of games. The main point of difference here is the thing you're fighting against is the universal monsters. Horrified is a welcoming game. It has simple rules, it's easy to teach, it looks nice on the table, and it has a theme that most people can get into pretty easily. All of the universal monsters are pretty iconic, even if you haven't seen any of those films. One thing I really love about Horrified is that you can play with 2 to 4 monsters. Playing with 2 makes the game very easy, playing with 4 makes it very hard, and the game ships with 6 different monsters, so you can mix and match that combination. That just gives the game a little bit of novelty each time you play it. If you're looking for a fun, simple, but scalable cooperative game, definitely consider Horrified. Number 48, Pan Am. This is a deceptive game. It looks like your normal network building business game, where the goal is to build up a fleet of airplanes and networks that you operate and run, and to run them at a profit. The thing that makes Pan Am great and what sets it apart from just about every other game is that Pan Am exists in this universe, and it's a giant monolith that is buying up everybody else's business. The key to this game is building routes that are desirable to Pan Am, that they'll come in and give you a lot of money for, and that you can use that money to buy shares in Pan Am. It really is a game about making money off being acquired by a giant out-of-control corporation, and I think that's really clever. It also plays in under an hour and has very simple worker placement rules. For me, this is one of the best foundation games that's ever been made. Number 47, Architects of the West Kingdom. This is a worker placement game, but a worker placement game with a difference. You see, there's no reset phase in Architects of the West Kingdom, and you start with 20 workers. At each turn, you'll be placing workers in different locations. Every time you place a worker in a location where you've already got one, you get an increased benefit. Now, there's ways and means of collecting these workers up, of stealing other people's workers off the board and putting them in prison and using them to get money. And it creates this fascinating flow where some locations get really strong and then other people swoop in to take your people off the board, and then they have to cycle back in. Architects has a wonderful flow to it. That system makes it a great game. But the truly remarkable thing about Architects of the West Kingdom is it's a worker placement game that probably works better at 4 and 5 player counts. A lot of other Euro games will bog down as the player count gets up, but Architects just naturally seems to flow. It's jam-packed full of great decisions, and the expansions don't bog the game down either. Architects is one of those games that each time I replay it, I'm like, damn, this is clever. I need to play this more. Number 46, Legendary Encounters, an alien deck building game. Upper Deck have made a lot of legendary games for a lot of different IPs. For Marvel, for the X-Files, for Firefly, for James Bond, and quite recently The Matrix. But of all of those games, the high water mark is still the alien deck building game. It is a cooperative deck building game. What really makes the game work for me is 3 things. 1, the aliens theme is just great. 2, the game is structured into 3 acts, and each act has increasing difficulty. So while you're getting better cards into your deck and that's evolving, the challenge is also increasing at the same rate. And the act cards are not just simply kill X number of creatures. They each have different tasks you have to do. And the third and final thing is how the vents work. Each card is placed face down, and you have to scan cards to reveal them. Revealing cards can trigger negatives, but they also give you more information. And it creates a wonderful atmosphere of uncertainty. And those three things are why I think Alien Legendary is a great thematic game, and the absolute best the Legendary series has to offer. Number 45, Santorini. There are two ways to play Santorini. One is with the core rules, and one is with the variable player powers. Santorini's core rules are about as simple as it gets. Each turn you'll move to an adjacent square and place a block where you previously were. You'll keep doing that until one model is standing on the third level of a building. A building can be topped off by having a fourth level placed on it, and no one can stand on that. Santorini has very much a chess-like feeling to it, where two players are trying to outmaneuver themselves on a very tight board. Santorini is a game that can be played from ages 5 to 105. And if the simple core system isn't enough for you, it does come with variable powers as well. So each player can have a different movement ability. The game doesn't need this to be excellent. And the reason I think it's one of the greatest games of all time is because of its simple core rules. Number 44, Azul. This is the original Azul game, and as far as I'm concerned, still the best of them. It is a beautiful drafting and tile placement game, where each turn you're taking tiles from a central display and trying to add them to your board in a way that's going to let you score points. Take too many tiles and you can score a bunch of negative points. And this game is quite mean in that regard. Azul combines the best features of drafting and tile placement, and does it with a beautiful looking package. It's also great at 2, 3 or 4 players, which is a wonderful thing for an abstract game. Now I am definitely a fan of thematic games, but for me, Azul's theme of being a tile laying game about laying tiles just works enough. And its brilliant core mechanics do all the rest. There are numerous other games in the series now, and they're all reasonably good, but I don't think any of them are as good as the original. Number 43, Century Golem Edition. This is the same game as Century Spice Road, just with different art and styling to it. And while I do prefer this presentation, it is the core gameplay of Century Golem that makes it a great game. In Century Golem, you'll start with a few cards, and you'll be able to pick up more cards throughout the course of the game. These cards either give you crystals or convert crystals into different types of crystals. And the gameplay is the series of collecting crystals and converting them into bigger and more important crystals. You'll then use those crystals to buy golems, and that is how you score points. The game is super quick and super simple, but it does all that it needs to for a foundation game. It's a great game because of its simple rules, how many decisions you get to make through the course of the game, and how fast that game plays out. It's another game I hardly recommend as a filler game or as a great game for family game night. Number 42, Pandemic the Cure. This is the dice version of the Pandemic game. It takes the same core idea, that there are 4 diseases out in the world and you need to cure them. And that's because you work for the CDC, an organization that when this game was created was actually interested in preventing diseases. What I love about this game is its core dice system. Each character has their own special dice, and they have different symbols on the sides that allow you to take a different variety of actions. Some characters are naturally better at other things, and each character has a special ability as well. So you'll roll your dice and then you'll take actions, and you can re-roll those dice as many times as you want. The thing is, one side on each of those dice is a bad thing, and if you roll those, you can't re-roll them and they have negative consequences. So the first time you roll, if you don't quite get what you want, do you risk a re-roll? How many times do you risk re-rolling? It's that push your luck element and the simple translation of the idea of Pandemic into a dice game that makes this a great game for me. Also, it's an incredibly hard and mean game. Number 41, Sentinels of the Multiverse. This is a cooperative boss battler where you are a group of superheroes trying to take down a supervillain. Each of the characters in Sentinels of the Multiverse has their own pre-constructed deck, and this means each character has their own unique quirks and playstyle. The villains also have their own unique decks and unique playstyle, and it's all about mixing and matching combinations of heroes to take down different villains. Sentinels of the Multiverse is one of those games a group could play 1,000 times. With all the different combinations of heroes, the different adversaries, and even different environments you fight in. You could revisit this game time and time again. And for me, that's why it's a great game, because of the richness of each of the characters and each of the villains, and finding out how all of these things work together. That creates a really rewarding and exciting multiplayer and solo experience. Number 40, Healthy Heart Hospital 2nd Edition. This game got a 3rd edition this year and it was incredibly disappointing. So this entry is very much about the 2nd edition and not the terrible 3rd edition. Healthy Heart Hospital is a bag manipulation game. You're put in charge of a hospital and there are different types of patients, all represented by cubes. In order to cure them, you have to pull the right cubes out of the bag. And it's the process of manipulating and tuning this bag through the course of a round that makes it a great game for me. It was sold as a cooperative game, but it excels as a solo game. And what makes it a great game for me are all the small decisions you make about the shape and complexion of the bag, and how you manipulate that bag to get the best outcomes to you at the end of the round. Number 39, Circadian's First Light. Circadians was the first solo designed by Sam McDonald, a designer most well known for collaborating with Shem Phillips on the West Kingdom and South Tigris series. Circadians is a dice placement game, and it's a fantastic dice placement game. Your dice are workers, and there's so much you can do with them on this strange alien world. It's also a dice placement game where rolling a bunch of sixes isn't necessarily the best thing every turn. And while I love the core dice placement and engine building in this game, what makes it a great game for me are the variable player powers. Every single character that you have in this game has a wacky special power that makes you play the game quite differently. So many other games go for small powers that modify the game a little. These ones make a huge difference. And I love that about it. I love the power fantasy that comes from that. And I like how every time I get a new character, it makes me think, oh, I have to play this game quite a bit differently in order to maximize the benefit from this character. Circadians isn't a long game either, but it is absolutely jam-packed with decisions. It also has a fantastic solo mode for anyone who's interested in that. Number 38, Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest. Now here is a fun game with a fascinating mechanical premise. It's played out over 3 expeditions, and each expedition will consist of 4 to 6 turns. And each turn, you'll play down a card, and that card will have a special effect on it. Everyone else is playing cards face down, and they're resolved in order. The player with the lowest value card will get their special ability to activate first, but the player with the highest value card will get to pick loot first, if they're still around. The trick though, and the thing that makes this a fantastic, great game, is that everyone starts with the same set of cards. They're from an available pool of 40 cards, but everyone is dealt the same 6 at the start of the game, and once you use them, they're gone unless you have a way of bringing them back. So you have to think, how am I going to use my cards differently to everyone else in the most advantageous way? And that makes for a brilliant game. There's a lot of card counting, mind games, bluffing and double bluffing, thinking and outthinking yourself. And it's all bundled together into a very bright looking, but incredibly vicious game. Number 37, Seven Wonders. This game's played over 3 rounds, and each round consists of drafting 7 cards. And it's pick and pass drafting. That's 21 small actions and the game is over and done. And yet there are so many important decisions to make within Seven Wonders. And all of those decisions are influenced by the wonder that you have, each of which will give you different priorities and way of scoring points. What makes Seven Wonders really hum for me is it scales incredibly well. As a 3-player game or a 7-player game, the game proceeds at the speed of the slowest drafter. It's a game you can knock out in 30 minutes, reset and play again happily. And that's probably why it sold a gazillion copies. Number 36, Paladins of the West Kingdom. This is my favourite game from Garphill Games, and has been ever since it came out. And that's because I am a big fan of engine building games and games that allow you to chain combos together. And that's what Paladins is. It is a game about building and chaining combos. There are a lot of moving parts in the game, but when the game clicks for you, there are a few games that are more satisfying. Paladins is a fantastic and unique feeling heavyweight game. Definitely one for the serious gamers though. Number 35, Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. Some people do not like app integration into board games, and I fully understand that. I understand a lot of people don't want to play a game that has an app involved. I'm really only a fan of it if the app does something that you couldn't do without it, and Mansions of Madness is the perfect example of a game where that is the case. Mansions of Madness 1st Edition had one player playing the Keeper, and they ran the game like an adversarial dungeon master. They would set up the game and all the clues, run the monsters, and try to beat the other players. This made the game a giant faff to set up. What the app did is it got rid of that player, and made the game fully cooperative. Now you can explore a haunted house or different locales and genuinely discover things, because the app won't show you what tile to place down until you get to the right point. It makes the discovery phase of this game legitimately feel like you're discovering things. And that's why it's a great game for me. It is the best example of app integration doing something you couldn't do with just cards or flipping over tiles. It blends the two mediums to create something unique. It's also a part of the Arkham Files universe that includes Arkham Horror 2nd Edition and Arkham Horror the card game. Aside from the app integration, it is just a fantastic Cthulhu-themed co-op game. There's all the stuff you expect from a co-op game and an amazing variety of scenarios. I believe 22 at last count. Now these vary in quality a bit, but when Mansions of Madness is good, it's great. Number 34, Block by Block Uprising. This is another firefighting cooperative game, but it's one with a real difference. First off, its theme is politically charged. You're all playing different factions who are trying to overthrow a corrupt regime. It's a game about civil disorder and civil disobedience. These wee blocks are very pissed off. But unlike most firefighting co-ops, this one feels like a war game. The police and your forces move around the board in rolling clashes. You can build barricades to slow the police down, and you take control of regions on the board, occupy them, and then try to liberate them. And you win the game by liberating a ton of districts. I love Block by Block Uprising, not just because of its theme, but because it feels like I'm playing both a firefighting cooperative game and a war game at the same time. Number 33, Yokohama. In 1868, Japan was, for all intents and purposes, a feudal society. By 1905, it had won an industrial war against Tsarist Russia. That 40-year period of intense industrialization and modernization is known as the Meiji Restoration, and that's where this game is set. You're one of the startup businesses that are trying to massively modernize Japan. And you do that with this fascinating system of moving your manager around the board and leaving influence in different places. And wherever your manager lands, that's where you take an action, based on the amount of influence you've put there. As far as I'm aware, it's a unique game because of the system, but it's also a very rich and open game as well. There are so many different paths to victory and so many different things you can do within the game. But that's not overwhelming because it's your manager moving around the board to take actions. So there's only a limited amount of places you can go each turn. I also really like that it's a game by a Japanese designer. And because of that, it includes a few things that Western designers might have missed. Number 32, The Manhattan Project, Energy Empire. There are several games in the Manhattan Project series, but Energy Empire for me is the best of them by far. It's a game set in the Cold War to the modern day, and through the course of the game you are developing up a country's infrastructure and also supplying its energy needs. You're also trying to do this in a way that doesn't cause too much pollution, or at least you want to tidy up that pollution. Energy Empire is a great take on worker placement games. And one of the things in it that I really love is that you can place in a spot that someone else is already in. But in order to do that, you have to spend more power than they have. So you might think, oh, that person's in there, I can spend 1 power and take that spot. That would be quite normal. But you can also do things like spend 4 power as your first action and occupy that spot so no one else can use it until you refresh, unless they want to spend 5 power. There's a great engine building and different ways to build your engine. And each game you'll start with a different country, which has a different focus on how it does things. And that just nudges you gently in a different direction each game. Energy Empire also has a fascinating cadence. In a normal worker placement game, you would want to put out as many workers as you could before you pick them all up. In Energy Empire, that might not be the case, because your pickup turn is when you generate power, and you use that power to flood your engine and score victory points. So once you've got your engine set up, you want to accelerate the game by taking less worker actions and more generate power actions so you can score those points and run your engine. This one's been out of print for quite a while, but I'm happy to report that it is coming back with a new edition that should be out basically when this video comes out, or if not, very soon after. Number 31, Clank in Space, a deck building adventure. This entry could probably be used for all of the Clank game series, but of those games, Clank in Space is my favorite one. If you prefer the original or Catacombs, just imagine I'm talking about them here. Clank in Space is a deck building game and a push your luck game. You've snuck on board a spaceship and you're trying to steal some artifacts. The further you go into the spaceship, the more dangerous it's going to get, but the better the artifacts you're going to get are in return. Clank in Space is all about building up your deck so you can get in and get out before the game starts to kill you. And that is what makes Clank in Space such a great game, the rising tension throughout the game. When you start off, things are easy. You have simple turns, you move a couple of spaces, and there's very low risk. By the end of it, you are absolutely sweating whether you're going to make it to the escape pods or not. Probably the greatest thing though in Clank in Space is when one of your opponents just dies 1 step away from the escape pods, or even 1 step away from the final board, so they score 0 points. It's incredibly satisfying to step over their corpse to victory.
Number 30, Hansa Teutonica. This is a mean game for mean people. There's a certain chap in my player group whose nickname now is the Cube Bastard because of how he treated me when we played this game the first time. It is relentless and I love it for it. Now, Hansa Teutonica might look like a grey, boring Euro game, but it is so much more than that. In this game, you're placing down cubes and building networks. What makes the game such a savage game is that you can displace other people's cubes from the board and they get a reward for this happening. So you are incentivized to get in other people's ways. The game actively rewards you for blocking people from doing what they want to do. You see someone's got a plan, you put a cube in their way, and that helps you out to no end and frustrates them. It is the most vicious little game you can possibly find. And for that, it's absolutely brilliant. Number 29, Roll Camera, the filmmaking board game. This one was in my top 10 last year and it was probably ranked a little too high, but it is still a very fun game. It's all about making movies, but it's not about making a great movie. It's about making a movie on a budget, and it's about all the silliness that happens when you're making a movie on a budget. It has some reasonably good and very normal cooperative gameplay, but it also has some elements that make it into a hilarious, brilliant, and fun game with the right group. The first of these is every player gets assigned a role, and these roles come with privileges. If you're playing the actor, everyone has to give you a round of applause when you ask for it. If you're the film's prop guy, you can make people hold things and wear silly hats. This doesn't do anything to the core gameplay aside from make it a lot more fun. The other thing that's brilliant in the game are the production meetings. Here, every player has a handful of terrible ideas. And these terrible ideas have in-game benefits. And you take turns pitching your idea to the person who's called the meeting. And this really works when people get into it and advocate very heartfelt for their terrible, terrible idea. Roll Camera might not mechanically be the strongest game ever designed, but that doesn't matter because if you have the right people playing it, it is a phenomenally fun, lighthearted, and silly shared experience. And every time I play Roll Camera, I have an absolutely fantastic time. Number 28, SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. This is one of my favorite new games and it does a lot of things that I really like in a board game. First of all, it's science fiction, but it's reasonably well-grounded science fiction and I always enjoy that. Secondly, it has an engine building aspect to the game. We have these project cards and you're trying to get the best mileage out of them. It then has a spatial element with how the board moves and some player interaction with how you're competing over scanning areas. Then it also has the reveal of the aliens, which is a mid-game tempo shift, something you have to adapt to and can't plan from the beginning of the game. These are all features that combine to make a game almost tailor-made for me. I'm legitimately excited for the expansion as well, because the secret sauce in this game is revealing the different aliens during the game. A lot of games will shake things up with a variable opponent or a variable challenge, but you'll normally know what they are at the start of the game. Having a mid-game crossover for me, that's a fascinating decision point. Having two of them, that's even better. Number 27, Chinatown. Not long ago, this game got remade as Waterfall Park, and Waterfall Park is terrible. The original Chinatown, however, is an amazing game. It's a game about trading. In this game, you get allocated random plots of land and random shops. You need to build up contiguous plots of land and have the shop tiles to go with them. And the only way to do this is by trading with other people in the game. It's all about finding mutually beneficial trades. Or to put it another way, it's all about finding trades that look mutually beneficial, but where you're getting a slight advantage from them. It's a game jam-packed full of positive interactions and negotiations. No one can force anyone to do anything in Chinatown, so everything is done by consent. Chinatown is a wonderfully high-energy game. It's definitely one for extroverts and people who like a bit of shouting and talking at the table, but if you're on a game where you're really interacting with people at the table, you can't beat Chinatown. Number 26, Underwater Cities. This is a game that has 30 actions in it. There are 10 rounds of play, and in each round you'll get to take 3 actions. And it is all about getting the absolute best you can from those 30 actions. Underwater Cities is a pure action optimization game, and it might be the very best one of them. What I really love about this game is its core system. There are 3 colors of actions around the board and 3 colors of card. If you match the right card to the right action spot, you get to take both actions. But sometimes that might not be the best thing to do. You might desperately need to take one action, in which case you won't get the other benefit. How you manage and chain all these actions together is how you win the game. Plus, the other thing that makes Underwater Cities great is you're not just pushing a score up a score track. You are building your underwater cities. A physical element of building out the domes, the connecting tunnels, and the resource generating things around them. Underwater Cities is a high skill game. If you're good at this game, you are going to crush the people you play against. It's a wonderful challenge, and the whole game, my brain is in turbo mode. Very few games engage me 100% throughout, and Underwater Cities is one of them. Number 25, Junk Art. I think just about every gamer needs something like this in their collection. A dexterity game that's just a hoot, a really good time, and Junk Art is by far the best of these games. It's all about stacking these irregular blocks in different ways, and it comes with 10 different mini-games. Now you can just play one mini-game if you wanted to, or you can play a series of mini-games and score them. Some will have you collectively build in a central display, some will have you build under time pressure, and others will just challenge you to build the highest thing. Junk Art is one of the most fun, hands-on games you can play, and I definitely prefer the wooden version to the plastic one. Number 24, Anachrony. This is a worker placement game with a high-concept science fiction theme. You are advanced societies, and you are warned from the future that a cataclysm is coming your way. You are warned by your descendants, who as a result of the cataclysm have discovered limited time travel, and that allows you to send resources and people back and forth. The planet is an irradiated mess, so in order to take worker placement actions on the board, you need to power up power suits to put your workers in. You can also take actions on your own board that don't require suits. It is a deep, rich, and interesting worker placement game with a whole bunch of neat quirks to it, and that alone would make it a great game, but visually, it is fantastic. It's a game that I've personally painted the models for as well, just to add that extra touch to its presentation. Anachrony was also one of the first worker placement games to come with an excellent solo mode, and the Chronobot and Chronobot 2 are fantastic solo modes to this day. Definitely one worth picking up just for solo play. Number 23, Battlestar Galactica, the board game. Some years ago, this game was remade as Unfathomable, and pretty much everything I say about Battlestar Galactica extends to Unfathomable as well. I just prefer the original theme, and it's the version of the game I still own. Battlestar Galactica is a team game. On one side you have the humans, and on the other side you have the Cylons. The thing is, the Cylons start unrevealed at the start of the game, and you might not even know you're on the Cylon team until the halfway point of the game. It's a game you play mostly as a cooperative game, but as you're playing the game, you're suspicious of everyone around you, and judging their actions, and deciding whether or not they are in fact a hidden Cylon. What makes this game great for me is the tension it builds at the table, the suspicion and accusations when things don't go the player's way. It's a game that really comes alive with a group that replays it quite a bit, where you develop your own table talk and your own banter, and your own patterns of behavior. It's quite a bit more complex than most social deduction games, but I think it pays off. And win or lose, the game has a knack of making the finish tense and close. I also like that you just legitimately feel like you're playing through a TV series. Very few games have come close to capturing the atmosphere of Battlestar Galactica. Number 22, War of the Ring. Now, I still own a copy of the first edition, but what I'm saying applies to the second edition as well. War of the Ring is a fantastic grand strategy game. And it's a grand strategy game with a difference, because it is character and card driven. Each player has a set of action cards that allow them to do thematic and powerful effects. Knowing what your opponent can do in the game is a big deal. And each player, especially the Fellowship side, has characters that can make a big impact on the game. What makes War of the Ring great for me is it allows you to recreate the Lord of the Rings. And it doesn't do this on rails. You don't have to play things out the same way. The Fellowship doesn't have to go through Moria. Rohan and Helm's Deep doesn't have to be the first big battle. You can do different things. You can split the Fellowship up early and send them on their different paths. You can keep them together all the way to Mordor. The Shadow can decide to bypass Gondor and head straight to the Woodland Realm. There's enough happening in the game and enough options that you don't just have to replay what happened. And I think that's brilliant. I think that makes for a much richer, much more interesting game. It also allows you to have games where you have elephants burning down the Shire. This is one of the best two-player war games on the market, and if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you absolutely need to give it a go. Number 21, Xia, Legends of a Drift System. This is a pure sandbox game. The only goal in the game is to become space famous, and you become space famous from a whole bunch of different sources. You can go mining, you can become a pirate, you can be a trader, you can be a courier, you can discover relics, you can explore strange new worlds, and you also get fame for just rolling a 20. It's not a game you can take too seriously either, because you're quite likely when you're doing something like mining to just explode and die. If you decide to be a trader, someone else might decide to be a pirate and hunt you for sport. And that's just a fair part of the game. Xia is all about emergent gameplay. You start off with one basic ship and a simple starting hex, and you will explore from that point on. You'll choose what you want to do, pick up different missions, and that's what makes it such a great sandbox experience. In fact, I've never played another game that's come close to being as good a sandbox game as Jar Legends of a Drift System is. So if you want a game you can set up and play for a whole afternoon, moving your ship around, rolling dice, having adventures, and just having a bit of fun, Jar Legends of a Drift System is the game for you. Just never take it too seriously.
And now we head into the top 20 games, starting off with number 20, Millennium Blades. Millennium Blades is a fascinating and unusual game from Level 99 Games. It's about playing in a collectible card game tournament series. Well, not quite. It is about that, but it's about being a character in a TV show about a collectible card game series. It's very meta. But what you do in the game is buy tons of cards. And the game goes through two distinct phases. The first phase is where you have a ton of money and you're buying cards from decks face down. And then you flip that card over, you get to see what it is. Now you decide whether you want to keep them, or you might put them out to an aftermarket and try to sell them. You may even want to trade them with other players. Throughout the course of the buying and trading round of the game, you are trying to assemble two things. The first is a functional card deck that you can take into a tournament. The second is sets you can add to a binder to score points. Then once you've done those things and you score your points for your binder, you start playing in a tournament. And a tournament consists of only 6 card plays for each player. It abstracts the whole idea of a tournament down to 6 card plays. And somehow that works. The person who generates the most points from their 6 card plays wins the tournament and wins fabulous prizes as a result. The winner of the game overall is the person who has the most points after 3 tournaments. The game has a ton happening. I've got all the expansions, so there are thousands of cards for it. I love the money in the game. It's these big wads of notes, and you use these notes when you're playing the game. You throw them down dramatically, like you're buying a set of cards, you're like, bam, throw down that money. It's so satisfying. I mean, metal coins are cool and all, but you can't just throw them around willy-nilly while you're playing, and you can with Millennium Blades, and I absolutely love that about the game. It is unique. There is nothing quite like Millennium Blades I've ever seen. If you have played collectible card games in the past, or even watched shows like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon, you'll get this game, and you'll have an awful lot of fun with it. So yeah, Millennium Blades, the card game about a TV show about a card game. Number 19, Unsettled. Unsettled is a planetary exploration game, and it's a cooperative game. Now, in most games like this, you play an elite team of hardened veterans, who all bring a unique skill set to the challenge of exploring strange new worlds. In Unsettled, you're not quite that good. You're still scientists, but you're the kind of scientists who, when they see like a giant, warm, squishy alien egg, decides to jam their face into it. Unsettled is sold as a core box and expansion boxes, and you can't play the game with just the core box. You do need at least one world box to go with it. And for a lot of people, I can see that being a pain in the ass. But for me, what it did is it allowed the designers to make the worlds feel dramatically different. While on Winora, which is a planet that's basically a giant mushroom, your scientists will hallucinate. And it's those hallucinations that might actually solve your predicament. Whereas on Yendril, there are massive tides that move back and forth. And the ocean is somewhat alive, and you need to avoid angering it. The key thing is each of these planets plays out really differently, and to me, that's amazing. But probably the greatest strength of Unsettled to me is its writing and scenario design. Each of these worlds has 3 or 4 scenarios in them, and each of them is held together by phenomenally funny and witty writing. This game could easily fall flat if the writing was subpar, but it's one of the few games where I'm playing through and I'm legitimately chuckling at the different things our characters have to do, the different solutions you have to come up with, and the terrible, terrible experiences your crew go through. Unsettled is a funny game, but it's also exceedingly tight. Each of the scenarios is on a timer, and you have very limited actions to get things done. So it's this mad dash rush panic to get everything done in time. And it's not about accumulating wealth or power or anything, it is simply about survival. So yeah, it's a science fiction game that feels way more Red Dwarf than it does Star Trek The Next Generation. And you know what? I'm here for that. Number 18, Sidereal Confluence. You might note that the version of the game in front of you is different from the one in the video that I'll be playing. And that's because this is the remastered edition, and I picked that up long after I did the original review. Now, Sidereal Confluence is a fascinating and unique game. It's a trading game, it's a negotiation game, but it's all that dialed up to the nth degree. This is one of the most intricate games ever designed. It has so many moving parts, but they work so elegantly. It's a Space Empires game with a bit of a difference. Your empires all get on. You trade, you make deals. In fact, you're a member of a great federation together. The goal of this game is to be the strongest and most powerful member within that federation without using war. And how do you go about doing that? Well, every single player in this game represents one particular faction, and those factions have wildly different rules. But more importantly, they have wildly different economies. And this game is about building up your economy. It's about maximizing your strength and plugging your holes. It's about making deals at the table that benefit you. It's about doing what you do well and marketing that to the other players. I think to tell the story of Sidereal Confluence, I'll just run through a couple of the factions and what they do that's unique and interesting. The Kaleon plutocracy, well, they have a hard time acquiring worlds, but when they do, they essentially terraform them to be twice as good as any other world in the game. A Kaleon modified world carries a high price on the open market, and they can trade these improved worlds to other players. In this game, most factions have a limit to the number of planets they can have, so having one that's worth double value, well, that's really important, and that's how the Kaleon start making money. The Imperial nomads, on the other hand, they don't even have worlds. They're building up a special fleet. They're a species of space vagabonds, and they don't care for worlds. They just care for the resources they need to get their fleet online. They have one of the most powerful economies in the game, but it takes ages to get going. So it's in their vested interest to make deals that are unfair at the start and pay them off later. They also have lots and lots of ships that other people can use to explore planets. So trading those is a big benefit to them as well. The Zeth and Ocracy have a pretty average economy, but what they do have is the ability to steal things off people who don't make deals with them. This makes them into somewhat of an extortion racket. Make a deal with me, an unfavorable deal, or I'll come steal some of your resources. Now, it's not that they can steal a huge amount, but they can steal the important things out from under you. If you're desperate for one resource and you just manage to get it and the Zeth leans over and goes, "Oh, you really need that, don't you?" You better make a good deal with them, or they'll take that thing away from you. In this game, you have things called resource converters, and they kind of work like a factory. You take raw materials in one end, and you produce improved materials at the other end. The Any Ent have the strongest converters in the game. They're extremely powerful. The thing is, they can't run them themselves. In order to make their economy flourish, they have to trade away these converters. They have to say to other players, "Hey, I see you converting 2 blue into 3 blue there. I can give you this that converts 2 blue into 4 blue." And figure out a way to make profit off that. The idea of having the most powerful engine in the game but not being able to use it is absolutely fascinating. And the final faction I'll talk about is Unity, who have the weakest converters in the game and the poorest economy. But most of what they produce is a wildcard resource. It can be plugged into any part of the economy and work. So while they produce less overall, if there's a shortage of something in the economy, they're the ones that can plug that gap. And they have to turn those holes in the economy to their advantage. Now, there are 4 other factions in the game, each with their own quirk like that. But I think that's enough to give you an idea of just how wacky and different these economies are. And that is the game. That's the game. It's going through several rounds of negotiation to get the resources you need to run your economy and learn new technologies. Those technologies will give you better ways to run your economy. And each turn you'll be trading things back and forth. Oh, and in this game, trades are binding. Any deal you make is 100% binding. There's no reneging, there's no going back on things. If you say you'll give someone 1 white cube next turn in exchange for a brown cube now, you have to do that. And I think that is also a little bit of secret sauce that makes the game go. You can't betray anyone in Sidereal Confluence. All deals are by consent, and as a result, it creates an amazing vibe at the table. This is a high energy game. I wouldn't play it with a bunch of introverts, it'd be a little weird, but if you got the right group at the table, absolutely stunning. And it scales to 9, and it does that well. I probably wouldn't play it with less than 4 though. Number 17, Tyrants of the Underdark. I've said numerous times in the past that I like deck building games that allow you to do something other than just improve your deck of cards. It's one of the things I love about Dune Imperium, but I think Tyrants of the Underdark takes the same concept and does it better. Here the focus really is on the deck building, and every card you've got really is about impacting the board. It's a game about building influence, about expanding your empire and your network in the Underdark, of recruiting terrible monsters to your side in order to smash over other players. It also has a wonderful use of spies in the game that allow you to project influence into other places on the board, but also use spies in a way that interact with cards in meaningful and significant ways. This is an extremely fast-paced area control game that escalates dramatically, due to the nature of deck building being one where every turn you get more progressively powerful. That works extremely well in area control, because it makes those final turns incredibly vicious, violent, and competitive. If there is a knock against Tyrants of the Underdark, it's that the card art is pretty average and the card stock is pretty poor. But the gameplay itself is absolutely brilliant. This is what deck building can do. It can make really cool games. And if you'd like a game where you're fighting your opponents tooth and nail to the death, Tyrants of the Underdark would be a great fit for you. Number 16 is Nemesis. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm a big fan of Alien and the Alien franchise, and in many ways, Nemesis is the best Alien game ever made. It does a ton of stuff I think is absolutely amazing. Thematically, it's an incredibly immersive game. You wake up on the ship, you don't know what's going on, you've got your own agendas, and you're desperately trying to stay alive while there might be terrible things roaming around the ship. And speaking of these terrible things, these are beautiful models. I'm a model painter. I have painted the entirety of Nemesis, and it looks damned fine on the table when you were playing with it. It's a game that has full cooperative rules, and you can play it fully cooperatively. And I know there's a bunch of people who don't like it because of the traitor element, and I do recommend just play with the co-op rules. It's still a very good game like that. But if you do like the traitor element, it excels there as well, because it does something that very few games do. Next, give you the option of being a traitor. In a game like Battlestar Galactica, you're dealt a card and it tells you if you're a traitor or you're not. In Nemesis, each player is dealt 2 cards at the start of the game. One is a cooperative objective that they can do and complete to win the game. The other one is a player versus player objective that requires them to screw someone over in order to win the game. And you have that choice. If everyone opts for the cooperative objectives, you have a fully cooperative game with a little bit of suspicion, because you're not 100% sure everyone's playing co-op. Or, if everyone goes backstab, it's Keystone Cops. Everyone's just out for themselves, murdering each other left, right, and center. But it's the player choice. I hardly recommend playing this one co-op for your first game as well. That way you can learn the systems and get to know how you can betray and backstab someone effectively. I would recommend Nemesis as a cooperative game to practically anyone, but it's a cooperative game that allows you to play a betrayal game as well. That and its extremely thematic rules and the suspenseful atmosphere it constructs means that it's an all-time great game for me. Number 15, It's a Wonderful World. I just did my Games I Got Rid Of video for the year, and in that video I mentioned It's a Wonderful World a whole bunch. That's because there were a few games I got rid of because they just didn't measure up to this. And what is It's a Wonderful World? Well, it's an engine building game that goes for 4 turns and has you drafting cards. And these cards have 2 effects. You can either discard them for their resource value, or you can try to put them into play. Each turn is played through 5 phases. And each of these phases matches a different color card and a different type of resource. And you produce and resolve them each in sequence. The goal of the game is, through these 4 turns, to assemble a mighty production engine that scores you a ton of points. One really remarkable thing about It's a Wonderful World is just how wide the points gaps are for players who it clicks with and players it doesn't. It is a game that you can effectively lose on turn 1 if you get behind. You'll be wanting to maximize every turn and every opportunity that comes across your table. On the plus side, an experienced group can play this game in 30 minutes. So if you get your ass kicked, it's not that big a deal. It's not like you were sitting at the table for 2 hours going, well, that was a bad game. Why it's such a special game for me is no game I know packs as many meaningful decisions into its short playtime as It's a Wonderful World does. There's so many ways you can manipulate the timing and use the cards to your advantage in order to make your engine exceedingly powerful. There are other great engine builders out there, but I don't think any of them do it quite as well as It's a Wonderful World. And certainly not games that you can play in under 45 minutes. In that niche, it absolutely dominates for me. And that's why It's a Wonderful World is and remains a great game. Number 14, This War of Mine. This War of Mine is a very different game to most things out there. It's very serious and it takes itself seriously. It's about surviving a siege, and it's about being civilians in that siege. And your civilians, they have to go through some pretty terrible experiences. In many ways, it's a different sort of board game experience than you'll get anywhere else. There's not really a feeling of triumph or of power or wish fulfillment in This War of Mine. It's a sort of humbling game with a narrative you feel like everything could go wrong in a heartbeat, and you feel like you're playing along, witnessing a great human tragedy. It's a game that can make you feel as well. Now, I know there's some people that this narrative bounces off, but I've played it with people who've been really emotional after a game of This War of Mine. It doesn't really pull its punches about what war is like. And I think it's an important game for that reason as well. There are thousands of war games out there about fighting, about being soldiers, and about being generals. But there's remarkably few war games out there about being the civilians caught in the crossfire. I'm not sure it's a game I'd recommend that everyone go out and buy immediately, but I think it's a game that I would consider that everyone should try playing at some point. The experience might not be for you, and it might not be your idea of fun, but if you find the idea of This War of Mine intriguing, do try and track it down. It is something a little special and something a little different. And for me, it's an example of when I talk about board games as art, not just being about the pictures in games, but about what they make you feel. This War of Mine is a great work of art. And to me, that's just a little bit special. Next up we have number 13, Endeavour Deep Sea, a game new to the top 100. Endeavour Deep Sea was my game of the year last year, and it was also my number 1 game from New Zealand last year. And since I gave it those awards, it's gone on to win a whole bunch of other big prestigious ones, such as the Spiel at Essen and the Origins Award at Gen Con. That's pretty damn impressive, and makes it critically one of the most successful games ever designed by New Zealanders. Full disclosure, I do know both of the designers personally. New Zealand is a rather small country, and the board game design community is even smaller. Jarrett in particular I've known for nearly 30 years. But that doesn't factor into why I think this is a great game. Endeavour Deep Sea is a great game for a bunch of reasons. The first of which is its action optimization system. You have extremely limited actions in Deep Sea, and you have to squeeze the absolute most out of them that you can. In order to do this, you need to chain together combos. Different effects that will give you extra activations that chain one after the other. Because in general, taking more actions means winning more stuff in this game. It also has a wonderful exploration element to it. You start with the surface of the ocean revealed, but can go deeper and deeper. And I love the color grading effect in this, where the deepest part of the oceans are black. It creates a wonderful visual on the table. Like many other games on this list, I love Endeavour for the amount of decisions it has in it, and the amount of meaningful decisions you have. From start to finish, you are trying to squeeze as much as you can out of Endeavour Deep Sea. It's also not as heavy as it looks. You might think this is a big chunky heavyweight Euro, but to me it feels more like a medium weight game. It also has a really friendly theme as well. So for a game that's about deep sea exploration, I think the sky's the limit for Endeavour Deep Sea. I think it's one of the games that's come out in the last 5 years that's going to hang around for a while, and people are going to look on this as a real classic game. And that's why in its first year, I'm confident to put it this high in my top 100. At number 12, we have Argent, the Consortium. Argent is a worker placement game, but it's a worker placement game with a difference. It's a worker placement game where you can attack each other's workers, where you can manipulate outcomes on the board, but even blow parts of the board up. See, you are all faculty members of a magical university, and you're all competing to become the next Chancellor, the next great Archwizard. And in order to do so, you've got to build up your power base, win supporters to your side, and fulfill the needs of the secretive consortium behind the college. You start the game not knowing what its victory conditions are. There'll be 2 public objectives and a bunch of hidden ones. And through the course of the game, you'll try to discover those hidden objectives. The person who wins the most objectives gets to win the game. What makes Argent so great for me is just the variety of options you have in the game. All the different rooms and different things you can do, and how interactive it is for a worker placement game. As I said before, you can have wizards attack other wizards. But you can also do other things like teleport them around, displace them. There are whole bunches of magical artifacts and spells that have game-altering effects. It's worker placement dialed up to 11, and it's a magical college theme done really well. The game also has a ton of ways you can change the experience. You can decide which rooms to include in the college, and that makes a real difference about what parts of the games will be focused on. You can also even change the standard abilities of each of the wizards in the game. This means you can have a more aggressive game or a more passive game, depending on what style works for you. Argent the Consortium is unique, and I've never seen another game do what this game does. And that's make a worker placement game that isn't passive aggressive. It's just downright aggressive, and I absolutely adore that about it. Number 11, Obsession. Obsession is still Stephanie's favourite game, and for me it comes in at number 11. Obsession is a game that has 3 really big things going for it. The first is its overall theme, and that is of running a stately house in Victorian England. That's a very evocative theme and lends itself to all the game mechanics. Everything you do in the game makes sense from a thematic point of view, and it just lends itself to creating fun and amusing table talk, based on which characters are socializing with whom and how scandalous that is at the time. The second thing it has going for it is it's a really tight optimization game. There's a regular length game and a long game, but even the long game only has about a dozen actions you take. And it's about making the absolute best out of those actions, because if you run out of cards to play, you have to take a turn mostly doing a refresh action. You don't want to be spending the whole game doing those. You want to be taking proactive actions. So it's how you squeeze the absolute most out of the game, so you have the minimum amount of downtime. And also hit the right milestones so you can bring down these big, famous guests that will make your house rich and successful. So as a thematic game, it's super engaging, but as a mechanical game, it's really tight and brilliant. And the third thing it has going for it is its designer and publisher, Dan Halligan is just a downright nice guy. Over the years, I've watched him interact with his customers and his fan base, and he's unfailingly the politest person in board gaming. And while that really doesn't impact my rating of the game itself, it does make it a lot easier to sing its praises when you know the person who's profiting from those praises is a damn fine person. So yeah, Obsession. It's a thematic game, but it is also a proper, decent, tight and engaging Euro-style game. Number 10 is Final Girl. Final Girl is a solo-only game, and it is one of the games I have played most over the last year. I have played this game a lot. Now, it's sold in a similar way to Unsettled, where you have a core box and then you have movie boxes. You can't play the game with just the core box. You need to have a feature film. But the feature film comes with two distinct elements: a killer and a location. And you can play those two together. So for example, this is the Hellscape box, and it comes with the Razorface killer and the Hellscape location. Those combined with the core box makes for a fully playable game by itself. But what you can do is mix and match films, and the second box I have here is called Into the Void. And the killer in this box is the Evomorph, which is basically the alien from the Alien franchise. And the location is the USS Conrad, which is pretty much the Nostromo from Alien. And again, you can play those feature boxes together. But you can also mix and match. You can place a killer at a different location. So you can have Razorface in space, or the alien goes to hell. And by the end of next year, there'll be no less than 26 of these feature boxes in existence. Now, just having a lot of a game isn't necessarily a good thing. But for me, I love the core gameplay, which is why it was one of my 3 most played solo games of last year, because the gameplay captures its theme extremely well. You are the final girl in a horror movie. You're the one that's figuring out something is wrong and trying to get people to safety. You're also trying to prepare and arm up and defeat the killer in a dramatic final showdown. It's an exciting and tense game that has a very different pacing to most other games. You see, in Final Girl, you're trying to build up a hand of cards to take big, dramatic, and exciting turns. If you sort of just drip feed your way through the game, just picking up some cards and then playing them, you're probably going to do pretty poorly. And if a game's going to go for about 10 turns, you're probably going to have 3 really big, exciting turns. It's a game about managing risk and picking your moment to strike. It's knowing when to hold them, when to fold them, when to walk away, and when to run that makes Final Girl such an exciting solo game. I am a massive horror movie fan, and this game is littered with references and tropes, and it just feels like a love letter, a homage to the whole concept of slasher films and horror in general. This is a game I've decided I'm going to do a lot more content for as well. I've put up a deep dive into Series 1, which is the first 6 feature films, up on the channel, and I'm going to proceed and do a whole bunch more videos on Final Girl, just because it's a game I like playing that much, and I enjoy doing content on the games that I really like to play a lot. So yeah, Final Girl, as far as pure solo games, you can't really beat it. Number 9 is Thunderbirds. Thunderbirds is another firefighting co-op game by Matt Leacock, the guy I've described already in this video as the king of co-op firefighting games. This is my favourite game he's ever made. I love Pandemic, The Cure and Daybreak, but Thunderbirds is just a nice, safe, happy place for me. The bad news is, this game is out of print. It was a limited release for the 50th anniversary of Thunderbirds. Now to me, Thunderbirds was a big deal. It was a show I watched a hell of a lot as a kid. It was a franchise that I was really excited to get a board game around. For a lot of people out there, Thunderbirds isn't that big a deal. But I have some really good news, and that is that this game is coming back as a generic Woodland Rescue style game. And that means without the IP, it can stay in print as long as it needs to. And the Woodland game's going to have some improvements and refinements. It's essentially a second edition of Thunderbirds with a completely new theme. And that's great, because this is a game I want to see out in the world a lot more. I want more people to experience it, because it is a great game. And what makes it great is its pickup and movement system. So in Thunderbirds, there is a steady stream of bad stuff happening, and you need to deal with it. Now, if you're in the right location, you can take on any challenge. But they become a lot easier if you have the right equipment in the right place. It's a game about logistics. It's about getting the right people in the right place at the right time. And it's about forward planning. It's a game where you really need to be thinking 3, 4, 5 turns in advance if you can. Because just making the best move on your turn is just not going to cut it. And that's why it's such an exciting and interesting cooperative game for me. Because it's not just about reacting to what's in front of you. It's about planning ahead. It's about moving all these complicated pieces all the way over the board to ensure that they're in the right place at the right time. And I'm really excited that this game is going to get a new audience. I think if you're into cooperative games, if you like the Pandemic series and Matt's other games, and haven't tried Thunderbirds, wait for this Woodland Rescue game to come out. I think you'll be really pleased with it. Number 8, Brass Birmingham. Brass Birmingham is Board Game Geek's #1 game, and it rightly deserves that spot. It is an excellent game. In Brass Birmingham, you are competing businesses, and you are working through the Industrial Revolution in England. And it'll be a network of buildings, initially connected by canals, but then later connected by trains. What makes Brass an amazing game for me is how interactive it is. In a lot of games like this, you kind of want to set up in your own corner and do your own thing. In Brass, you get rewarded for playing on top of other players. You see, when a building is used, it flips over. Now, a lot of buildings, you use them by shipping their product. But things like iron mines, coal mines, and breweries, well, those get flipped when the resources on them are used. And using the resources on someone's mine costs you nothing. Whereas getting them from a general supply, that does cost you money. So if you see someone's building up train lines in an area, you can build a coal mine, and they'll be happy to see you do that, because it's free coal for them, and when the coal runs out, your building flips over, and you make a profit off it. It's a big, wide open game, but your choices are actually limited. You'll have a hand of 8 cards, and each turn you'll get to play 2 of them. And these cards represent locations or industries. So if you want to build a brewery in stone, well, you need to either have the stone card or a brewery card. If you don't have those, well, you're going to have to come up with a different plan. Halfway through each age of the game, you'll run out of cards to redraw, so you'll go from 8 to 6 to 4 to finally 2 cards in your hand. And it's managing those cards and those decisions combined with the interactivity of the game that makes Brass Birmingham an absolute winner for me. I have a group of people who don't really care for Eurogames, and they love Brass Birmingham, precisely because of how interactive it is. And you know, Brass Birmingham is a great example of sometimes things are popular because they're actually pretty good. Number 7 is Leaving Earth. It doesn't come in this box. This is a box a friend of mine, Thomas, made me. He's the same guy who made this table, but I did make the lovely picture of Jupiter on the cover. Leaving Earth is a space race game. Each player is a different nation's space agency, and you're set about exploring our solar system. Now, the core game covers the inner worlds, but there is also an expansion for the outer worlds and a second expansion that has more systems to do with space stations and other life support stuff. I tend to play the game with all of it included. There are several things that make Leaving Earth a fantastic game for me. The first of those things is that it is right on the edge of complexity. If this game was any more complex, I would probably be turned away from it. But it is a game where you have to calculate thrust, you have to calculate load, and you have to figure out how to get from point A to point B, going through a whole bunch of other places, generating enough thrust to get the payload you need to the right place. And that requires math. Now, you don't need a math degree to do this. It's all relatively simple arithmetic. If you can multiply and divide, you should be okay playing Leaving Earth. But what it does is make for nice, deep, rich puzzles where you're trying to figure out, how do I get a lander onto Mars? And you work backwards from your destination. So, okay, to get that there, I need to land it. To land it, I need to get into orbit. To get it into orbit, I need to go through these points and figure out exactly how much energy you need to get that payload into place. So the first point is it's complex, but it's a rich form of complexity, not an overbearing one. The second thing that makes it great is its testing and experimentation system. When you research a new piece of technology, it comes with at least 3 outcome cards. These outcome cards can have minor fails, major fails, or successes on them. Every time you use the piece of equipment, you shuffle that deck and you deal out 1 card. If a failure is revealed, it usually has a pretty catastrophic effect. But failures cost less money to get rid of than successes do. And you might test a rocket 3 or 4 times and get success, success, success. But there still might be a failure in there. In order to be absolutely positive that an item works, you need to get rid of all these cards. You can choose to do a bunch of testing and make sure everything's safe. Or you can just kind of throw a rocket into space and hope. However, you are punished for losing astronauts, so taking a high-risk approach might not necessarily be a winning one. And the third and final thing that makes it neat is there is an exploration element to the game. Instead of everything in the solar system being 100% what we know it to be now, it includes some randomness that could cause planets to be remarkably different than what they actually are. The moon, for example, instead of being a flat, lifeless piece of rock, could actually be covered in a layer of fine dust that makes landing on it impossible. You might send a probe to Venus and find out that it's actually habitable under there. And you could find life on Mars. The most likely state of things is as it is in reality. But having the possibility that things are different, well, that means you can't plan with certainty. You can't know for certain that you can just pick a person up and throw them on the moon and they'll land safely. You might have to launch a probe to test that assumption first. So yeah, in conclusion, Leaving Earth is a magical game. I know it's made by a very small independent publisher and it can be a giant pain in the ass to get. But if the things I've outlined here sound interesting to you, it is a deeply rewarding game. Also, quite fun to play solo. You just give yourself a bunch of challenges and see if you can do them. But it's probably best as a competitive game, because then you've got that push your luck element coming into play a lot more. Because sometimes there's a possibility if someone launches a space mission, you can launch a riskier one and get there before them. And I love that that's a possibility in this game. Number 6 is Heat, Pedal to the Metal. What some of you might not know about me is I'm a massive Formula 1 fan, and I have been for a very, very long time. I'm the kind of person who watches every single race and qualifying session and a good chunk of the practices as well. And I've always wanted a really good Formula 1 board game, and well, Heat, Pedal to the Metal is it. This is the best racing game I've ever played, by a considerable margin. It does everything I want a racing game to do. It allows for actual racing, it allows you to push your luck, it allows you to customize your cars, and more importantly, it has an orange car in it. And that's a big deal if you've been a McLaren fan since 1985 like I have. What Heat does that makes it so good is it focuses on the racing without bogging itself down in complexities. There's a tendency for people who are Formula 1 fans to get a little bit technical with their gameplay. And I've seen a bunch of other games out there that are just way busier. But Heat, Pedal to the Metal focuses in on the racing. It's all about cycling through your deck of cards and making the best decisions that you can. About carrying the right amount of speed to the corner and getting a good exit. Of pushing your car to its limit, but not doing so much that the car explodes. If you want a racing game that can appeal to all levels, from kids through to grouchy gamers, Heat is the one for you. It's also got a bunch of expansions and tracks, and I love that about it as well. In racing games, you really can't have enough tracks. Number 5, Star Wars Rebellion. A lot of what I said about War of the Ring applies to Star Wars Rebellion, and over time, I've really come to choose Rebellion as my favourite of the two. I used to treat these games like siblings, and as a parent, I couldn't choose a favourite, but I have, and that favourite is Rebellion. And that's not a knock on War of the Ring. That's still a game way up my top 100. I just think Rebellion does the same sort of stuff better, and I kind of prefer Star Wars as a setting to Lord of the Rings. After all, no one finds out where I live and then immediately asks me whether I like Star Wars. What Rebellion does so well is make a character-driven wargame. So you have cards that you use to give orders, but each of those orders has to be carried out by a leader, and it's how these leaders move around the board and interact with the board that make it a dynamic wargame. You can't move and do everything each turn. Everything needs a leader, and that just naturally builds narrative. It builds stories. It's not a fight where I throw my 2 Star Destroyers at your 1 Mon Calamari cruiser. It's a fight where Admiral Peart is going head to head with Admiral Akbar. It's a game that naturally lends itself to storytelling and for you to create your own version of the rebellion. Then there's a cat and mouse game between the Empire and the Rebels and the asymmetric win conditions. The Rebels have to hang on while scoring a bunch of little objectives and wins, but the Empire can win the game immediately by fighting the Rebel base and crushing it. And it's that search for the Rebel base that gives this game its fascinating tension. And that's probably the main difference between this and War of the Ring. I find the hunt for the Rebel base way more engaging than the hunt for the ring. So if you are a Star Wars fan, or a fan of 2-player games, especially head-to-head games, definitely pick up Rebellion. It'll take you a little while to learn the game, there's no doubt about that, but it is a very rich and rewarding experience. I wish Fantasy Flight Games still made games like this. I really do. Number 4 is Terraforming Mars. By and large, I'm not a big fan of big box versions of games. This is one of the few big box games I'm really glad I have though. I've also played a lot more Terraforming Mars this year, in no small part due to getting a bunch of extra maps for it. It is still, to me, the greatest engine building game around. And the sheer number of different engines you can build, and how you can interact with the board, how card drafting works between different players, and how the different corporations steer you down different paths. This is a game that I will continuously play and never ever get tired of. I have logged 1,200 hours on the app version of this game, which is an absolutely terrifying amount when you think about it. But that's because it's my nightly wind down routine. I play 15 minutes of Terraforming Mars, I play 1 solo game, and I go to bed. And you know what? Over many, many years, that builds up. And yet I am still not sick of this game. Not remotely. In fact, playing it on the app just makes me more excited when I play it on the physical version. Because I'm not playing the solo mode, I'm actually playing against people and getting to actively draft things, and that's really exciting. Throughout this list, I have mentioned how I like science fiction games, and I like engine building, and I like optimizing actions. And Terraforming Mars does all those things. Number 3, the Castles of Burgundy. This is the other special edition I'm a big fan of. But that said, there's a big chunk of this content we don't use. There's a few expansions that add extra boards and stuff, and we just never really use them. What we do use, though, are the high quality pieces and the many different boards in this version. But I could probably chuck out half of this box and never notice. Now, my issues with big box bloat aside, Castles of Burgundy is an absolute banger of a game. And it's a game that follows the most simple core idea. Each turn you'll roll 2 dice, and then you'll take an action with each of those dice. And they're just 6-sided dice. You'll have a few mechanisms that allow you to move them up and down, but for the most part, you're using a dice to pick a tile, or place a tile, or ship some goods. And your goal is to paint your board, and score the most amount of points you can while doing that. Castles of Burgundy is possibly the best action optimization game ever made. You have to make each of those dice count, and the best players will get tons of mileage out of them. Now there's an action you can take, which is spend a dice and to get 2 workers. Workers are what modify dice for you. This is pretty much a wasted action, but you will find yourself needing to do it most games. And the real skill space in this game is knowing where to spend those workers because you legitimately need something, and there isn't another option on the table you can use. If you get too focused on one way of doing things, you can end up just getting workers and spending them over and over again because you're zeroing in on one strategy. You need to adapt to your dice rolls. You need to have multiple things going at the same time and not just sitting there going, oh, I need a 6, I need a 6, I need a 6. Because you might not roll one for like 5 turns. To me, Castles of Burgundy is one of the most elegant board games ever designed, and it's a game that gets played with all of my gaming groups. Even the ones that don't really like Euro games, they like Castles. And that's because every turn, you're not overwhelmed with decisions. There's always something you can do. And I think to make a game that is this rich and varied of such a core, simple game mechanic, really brilliant. So yeah, Castles of Burgundy. You don't need this special edition unless you're really into the game. And even then, there's probably a bunch of stuff in here you won't use. Just pick up the regular box if you want to give this one a try. That brings us down to our last 2 games, and for all intents and purposes, these games are my number 1 and number 1A. But because this is a ranking thing and I'm not going to have ties, I have to make this call, and Spirit Island is going to be our number 2 game. I've played a lot of Spirit Island this year and I really got into Nature Incarnate. And while there's a little bit of power creep in Nature Incarnate, the spirits are really fun to play and the adversary is pretty cool too. The Incarnates in particular, like the behemoth that stomps around the island squishing people, an absolute delight to play. Spirit Island is a cooperative game, but it's a cooperative game with several differences. The first is, it's quite complex. There's a lot going on here. The second is its theme. Instead of fighting against plagues or aliens, you're fighting against colonialism. And you take on the role of nature spirits, each of which represents a different aspect of the natural world. And you start off sleepy and slow, but as your spirit wakes up, they grow in power and unleash terrible rage upon the invaders. And that's where its other point of difference comes in. Each spirit plays dramatically different. They have their own unique rules and their own unique way of playing, with big strengths and big weaknesses. And you combine that with emergent power selection. So through the course of the game, you'll be drafting new powers and adding them to your repertoire. So you can play the same spirit multiple times in different games and get different sets of powers coming out. There are also tons and tons of levers in Spirit Island to adjust the difficulty to the level you want it to be. At 0 difficulty, it's still a reasonably complicated game, but you can dial the difficulty up several stages and fight against 1 or 2 invaders. I'm the kind of person that fights most invaders in sort of the level 3 or 4 area, occasionally on level 6, but I'm never crazy enough to try 2 invaders at once. So it has this range of depth that a lot of other games don't. You can play it with friends and family at a reasonably casual level if you can teach them along. Or you can get super into this game and play it like difficulty 12 or higher. And that's where the really skilled optimizer type players will have a real fun time with Spirit Island. Try to wring the most they can out of each spirit and take on these very high challenges. There's very few games I know that have that scale, that have that customizable difficulty, that allow you to pitch a challenge at just the right level for your player group and adjust it over time. And as I've said before about Spirit Island, I find the whole vibe of this game resonates with me. I am from Aotearoa, New Zealand, a Pacific island that was colonised. And growing up, there were tons of stories about Taniwha and other spirits in the natural world. So while Spirit Island isn't based on Te Ao Māori directly, there are a lot of correlations and a lot of shared experiences here that really do connect with me. And that aside, it's just an absolute banger of a game. A shout out to the app version of the game that is getting Nature Incarnate right now. When I was recovering from my surgery earlier this year, I spent a lot of time in bed with the tablet, playing lots of games of Spirit Island. And the whole time I was sitting there going, God, I wish the Nature Incarnate spirits were on here. And thankfully, they are now coming out one at a time. And of course, that leaves the final game, Arkham Horror, the card game. I originally got into Arkham Horror back in 2016, and Stephanie and I and two of our friends played through the Dunwich Horror together. But for various reasons, 2017 was a pretty bad year for me, and I stopped doing a lot of gaming. And Arkham Horror, the card game, was being sold in these little blister packs. And they are a right pain in the ass to get a hold of. And by the time I decided I wanted to get back into it, there were like 20 odd expansion packs I needed to pick up, and I just put it in the too hard basket. Fast forward to a few years back, and they started putting out Arkham Horror in big boxes. And that's when I decided to jump back in. And I have absolutely no regrets at that decision. There are 10 big box campaigns for Arkham Horror, the card game. And in the last 2.5 years, we've played through 9.5 of them. We're halfway through the Forgotten Age, which is the last official campaign I haven't played. I've also played a fan campaign all the way through, which is Cyclopean Foundations by The Beard, which I paid to print out and is legitimately an amazing campaign. And that ignores all the stuff I've done on Tabletop Simulator or playing solo by myself. I have played so much Arkham Horror in the last 2 and a bit years. It is easily the game I have sunk the most time into. And the reason for that is very straightforward. It is an excellent cooperative game. It's a cooperative game where you pick a role and you choose to excel at it. You make a character that fits in with the rest of the team, and you do your best to contribute to the team. The second big thing is it's a deck construction game, so there is a massive pool of cards. It scratches that itch you get from games like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon, where you want to build the best deck possible out of a giant pool of cards. But here, instead of fighting against your friends, you're working with them. And thirdly, it works in campaigns. So you'll choose a campaign to play, and it will consist of a number of stories. You'll play through one story, and that'll have consequences that bleed onto the others. And you'll also get experience points that allow you to buy better cards into your deck. Now, this is an element of deck construction that doesn't exist in many games, and Arkham Horror does it exceedingly well. Your character gains in skills and experience as they go through, and that allows you to do bigger, better, and wackier things. The scenarios themselves also increase in difficulty, and a well-crafted campaign starts you off slow and gently builds to a massive crescendo at the end where you're fighting against the great old ones. It is a game that makes moments constantly. It is the only game that I have a regular weekly session dedicated to just one game. That is the only game we play on Wednesday nights, is Arkham Horror, the card game. None of the other games in my collection have that privilege. And that's not just because I want to work through the content, it's because I enjoy the game that much. If you have been looking at getting into Arkham Horror, it might be a good idea to try that in the next year or so, because they are releasing a new version of the game. To counteract the fact that they have these 10 different campaign expansions and a whole bunch of investigator cards, they're going to do something that reduces the card pool, so you don't have to don't get overwhelmed by all of the backlog they have to catch up with. Because there's a lot of really good content there that I don't want to see go away. But if you've been sitting back going, oh, I don't think I can afford buying all that stuff for Arkham Horror, there is a new day coming for the game early next year, and it might be a good start point for you to try. So yeah, I really like Arkham Horror, the card game. It occupies an awful lot of my time. I can be sitting on public transport and just fiddling around with deck construction, making characters for it. And that, to me, is why it's my favorite board game and the greatest board game of all time. So that brings us to the end of the list. That's my top 100 board games of all time. It's almost certainly not your top 100 board games of all time, because I don't think we'd be able to find two people whose top 100 games perfectly matched up anywhere in the world. And that's fine. That's a wonderful thing about board gaming. There's so much variety and wonder in the hobby that everyone has the freedom to pick and choose what their tastes are. Now, on that note, if after watching this list you go, oh, I think Jared would really like that game, let me know in the comments. But if after watching this video you think, that Jared, he's a bit of a doo-doo head, please don't make that comment. After all, this is just a top 100 list, it's just a bit of entertainment. Let's just have some good positive conversations in the comments below. And a reminder, 3 Minute Board Games does not do paid content. Keep us independent by supporting us on Patreon. This is 100% not paid endorsements of any games. Even though I'm clearly heaping praise on a whole bunch of games here, that all does come from the heart. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the notification button, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Take care.